Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lara, or Lara Likes Mascara, and I have a real focus on my channel on under consumption and being a conscious consumer. And as part of that, I am usually on a makeup no buy or a makeup low buy, and I assign myself all sorts of projects so that I can really get full use out of the makeup products that I own and, really make sure that I'm appreciating my entire collection. So as part of that, I am currently on a blush roulette. And what this means is every month I bring a new blush into my daily makeup bag, and that is the pretty much only blush that I focus on for that entire month. And I'm focusing specifically on powder blushes. I do currently have 2 cream blushes, but because that part of my collection is so small, I'm not focusing on that. I started off the year with 12 powder blushes, and my goal was just to really reevaluate and reassess if I loved all of these blushes and if they were worth keeping. And so this is the 3rd update. I will link the full playlist here. And yeah, by the end of the year, I just really want to get to know my whole blush collection better and know which blushes I just shouldn't be keeping anymore, because I have already decluttered a fair few. So this project has been very productive so far, and I'm going to give you an update on how the past few months have gone in terms of using those blushes, if I love them, if I decide to declutter them, and then also talk about the remaining blushes that I will be using in this project pan for the remaining few months of the year. So let's get into it. So what we have to cover today is Milani Luminoso. I want to talk a little bit about this because the previous update was in July, so I don't think I had gotten a full month of use out of it. And then also my August, September, and October blushes. So let's start with Milani Luminoso. This is a blush that I used to love. It used to be a favorite. Why is it so hard to open it? But now I think these days I am preferring blushes that are less pigmented and that you're able to work up more, because it's just so much easier to get a good blush look. Like, I often go overboard on blush. I apply too much because I do have blush blindness. Like, I like to wear more blush than most people, but I don't want to look clownish, and sometimes I do end up looking clownish. And the lighter a blush is, the easier it is to not mess up with your blush. So let me swatch this for you here. It's a beautiful shade. It's very glowy, and it's just super pigmented. I mean, swatching it there, it looks beautiful. It doesn't even look that pigmented, but I often felt like I was using too much, like I had too much on my face. Now, granted, I should say that I usually use 2 blushes every day. I will do a cream blush, and then I will go in with a powder blush on top. So I tried to make sure that I was using all of these blushes by themselves some days, in addition to wearing in tandem with another blush, just so I could really, fully appreciate what this looks like as a blush by itself. So maybe that was part of the issue, that I was just too frequently wearing it with another blush, and combined that was too much. But yeah, this was not as much of a favorite as I remember it being, and I'm sort of bookmarking in my mind blushes to go back to and reassess one more time, because I'm not planning on doing a blush roulette again next year. I feel like I got what I wanted to out of this year, and I also have other projects planned for next year. That being said, I do want to continue using and learning about my collection, and so in order to do that, there are some blushes that I feel like I have to reevaluate and see again if they really are worth decluttering once I've done that first round, because so far I have decluttered 4 blushes because of my blush roulette. So those were like the first round of declutters, but there might actually be a second round in 2025. So this is one of those blushes that is like not quite on the chopping block, but thinking about putting it on the chopping block, which is shocking. And honestly, I don't think I will declutter this, but it's possible. It is a possibility for future. So this was a great blush to use in the spring, summer. I really don't feel like it makes a lot of sense to use in the fall, winter. It's just so glowy. It's yeah. Liked it, didn't love it, which was a surprise to me. So that was the first blush. The second blush was my August blush. This is from Wet n Wild. This is in the shade Mellow Wine. And this is another one that I am bookmarking for future to potentially reconsider as a blush to maybe declutter. I'm using a lot of like potentially, maybe, because I'm not ready to part with these yet, but I recognize that one day I might be. So this is another one it's just super pigmented, and it doesn't look like it would be. Even when I swatch it, you're gonna be like, that's not super pigmented. Part of it is the texture. It is really powdery. I don't love super overly powdery blushes, and I found this really easy to over apply. Like some days I would look at myself in the mirror and be like, well, you put on way too much blush today, and I didn't intend to do that. And also, another thing, I mean, this is kind of a silly reason, but you can see how much of the imprint is still there. And that is after using this almost every day for a month, on top of having owned this for probably close to a decade and having used it during those 10 years. Now, granted, I wasn't using it that much in those 10 years, but I think I can count on at least like 50 to 100 uses in that period of time, on top of the 25-ish uses that I had during my focus month. And so if that much of the imprint is still there after that much usage, how am I ever going to finish this? That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, I eventually want to be able to pan everything in my collection. That's my goal. I want to really use all of these products properly, and the way to do that is to finish them. And I just don't know if that is achievable with this blush. I think people have finished it. If you ever finish one of these Wet n Wild blushes, let me know. But for me personally, if it's not a favorite, and if I've got 10 plus other blushes that I'm also working on, I don't know if I will ever finish this. So maybe I should just pass it on. This is only 4 grams. Like, that doesn't even sound like that much. What's the Milani Luminoso? This one is 3.5 grams, so this one is less. Anyways, what's this Kiko one? 5 grams. Oh my god, this one's so much more. Oh, blushes are so big. They're so hard to finish. You don't need more blushes. That should be the moral of this whole story here. You have so many freaking blushes. I have barely made a dent on any of these blushes, and I've used all of them for a month each. Let that sink in. Anyways, this is even more in consideration to be decluttered than the Milani Luminoso one. It was fine, but I don't love it. I don't like it that much. And especially in comparison to the blush that came after, my September blush, I was looking forward to having a different blush to rotate to. And that's when you know that, maybe you don't love this blush, because that didn't happen every month. Some month I was like, oh, I'm loving using this blush. With others, this blush, for example, was one where I was really enjoying it, and I actually ended up using it past September. So I think I used this on October 2nd or 3rd as the last time, because I was like, oh, I just want to get a little bit more use out of it because I was having so much fun. So there's a real contrast there. So this is Kiko Sunset Pomegranate. So let me swatch it for you here. Now, this might look, I mean, it is. It doesn't just look hot pink. But somehow this was so much easier to build up. Like, I could use the smallest amount that I wanted. Whereas with the other ones, I would apply like one layer and be like, oh, that's too much. This one, I would often go back a second or third time for more. The last time I used this, I remember I like did 2 layers and then I went about my day and I was getting ready to leave. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I could use a bit more blush. And it wasn't that it faded, but I just looked at myself and was like, I want more. These, I like that there's some shade variety between the 3 of them, but this was definitely my favorite. I don't know if that was just because of the color or also the like texture and consistency. I would have thought that I would have preferred these 2 other shades because I don't typically love hot pink, but I just thought that this was a beautiful shade and I'm so glad to have rediscovered it. The order actually should have been like, this should have been my July blush, this should have been my August blush, and this was my September blush, so that was correct, because I just, in terms of like the order of how much I like each of these, I'm trying to go from like January is my least favorite to December is my most favorite. So love this, definitely one of my favorite blushes of the year, and I will definitely try to reach for this more in future, but it is not going anywhere. So those are the first 3 blushes, and then right now it is October, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the blush that I'm currently using, but there's a few more weeks in October, so I will probably discuss it a little bit as well in my final update of the year. And oh, I didn't even grab it. It definitely was not a great call to wear a shirt with sleeves this like long and drapey when I was swatching so many things, but I went to Plato's on the weekend and I found a bunch of very nice fall clothing, so I could not help it. Don't worry, I decluttered a lot of stuff that I should have decluttered ages ago, and for the most part the things that I got were all items that were really filling gaps in my wardrobe. That's how I justify it anyways. Okay, so this is MAC Angel, and it is a super pale shade. I would think looking at this that it would not even show up on my cheeks, but somehow it does. Let me see if I can swatch it for you. Yeah, so you can see it's almost like a pastel, like it really stands out on the skin. And I was thinking last time that this could almost work as one of those like under eye powder shadows. You know how a lot of people are doing like a light pink or a light peach under their eyes as like a highlighting powder instead of just like a regular light pressed powder. So I was like, ooh, that could be fun to try that. And I actually tried that today, and I feel like, I mean, I don't think it looks better than my regular powder, but it's pretty seamless. Like you wouldn't be able to tell, I don't think, that under my eyes it's pink. So I'm going to keep playing around with that. Yeah, that's kind of fun because I'm not the kind of person who hops on trend bandwagons like that. I'm not going to be like, ooh, you know, using a pink pressed powder is now trendy, so I'm going to go buy one. I make use of the products that I already have. This is like a really nice workaround that I already have something in my collection that could work well for that. And I encourage you as well to do the same thing. If there's something trendy, but you have something similar in your collection that could fit the same purpose, try it out. Why not? Anyways, I have been liking this blush, but so far I have only used it in tandem with other blushes. For a couple of days, I was using it in tandem with the Kigo blush, because you know how people are doing that like sunset ombre thing where it's like a lighter shade on the apples of the cheeks and then it gets darker on the way up. Anyways, I was trying that. I was kind of meh on it. And then I also have been using it with some of my cream blushes / my lipstick as blushes. So I haven't really got a sense of what this looks like by itself. I am gonna have to play more around with it, but I still really like this blush, and it is nice to have something that's so different from the rest of my collection. Like it's such a light shade. It's almost like a cool mauve. So that is fun. I have not got that much use out of this as a product in general, just because I find it a little bit harder to use, but looking forward to exploring this for the next few weeks. That's the October blush. And then of course we have the two final blushes of the year, and these are my two favorites. I have saved the best for last. And also I recently got two of my wisdom teeth out, so if I'm talking a bit funny, that is why. I did mention that in my last video as well. We are healing, but you know, still a bit rocky. So which one did I even say that would be my first and my last? I think we might as well do two MAC ones in a row. So this is going to be my November blush. This is the Warm Soul Mineralized Blush from MAC. This was actually decluttered to me by Shauna, and this is one that when she first decluttered it to me and in the like year or so afterwards, I loved it. This was my favorite go-to blush. This is the powder blush that I would bring with me when I traveled. I was obsessed. I think a lot of it is because it's like a neutral, and I don't really have any other neutrals in my collection other than my December blush. That one is upcoming. You can see it's sort of most similar to Mellow Wine from Wet n Wild, but it's a lot sheerer, so it's easier to build up. You're not gonna like overwhelm your cheeks as much. But I have tried to use this a few times in the past few months, just as like a little treat to myself, to be like, oh, I'm kind of bored of my blush and, you know, it's a special occasion, so let's reach for a favorite. And when I've used this, I haven't been as wowed as I remember being in the past. I don't know if that's my preferences changing or just the day and how my skin was looking or what, but I am curious about what's going on with my feelings towards this because I loved it. I think I still love it, but I want to play around more with it. And it actually is, it's in a shade that I have been exploring, thinking about purchasing a cream blush version of, because I recently finished my Milk blush in the shade Work, and I only realized afterwards how much of a gap that blush filled in my collection. I mostly just like complained about it while I was trying to pan it because the formula and like the packaging was not good, but I had nothing in that shade. Like, yeah, just a nice neutral that would work under all blushes, because as I mentioned, I usually do a cream blush and then a powder blush on top. So just to sort of lay a bit of neutral color down and then to pack more of whatever shade I'm feeling like. That, I love that formula. The formula of like 2 different kinds of blushes. So I'm thinking that I do want some kind of cream blush that's in a really neutral light shade, because I only have 2 cream blushes. One is a bright red and one is a very, very bright pink. So anyways, this is what I think comes closest to that in powder form, but I think it would be much more useful in cream form. So I'm thinking about that for 2025. Obviously for 2024, I'm covered on the blush front. I'm also trying to finish up some of my lipsticks as blushes, as I mentioned. So that will be an end of the year / 2025 thing. But let's not forget about my December blush. What I am currently thinking is my favorite blush in my whole collection. That could, I mean, it might be different when it comes down to it and I try it, but this is the Tarte blush in Party. This is my second one of these. I completely panned the previous mini that I owned. I think that was the first blush that I ever finished, and this is another mini. You can see I've already hit pan. I will swatch that for you here. I think it's pretty similar to the other MAC one, but it's got a bit more pink. I didn't leave myself enough space there. Yeah, so you can see formula-wise, super similar. Not very powdery, a little bit of glow, but just more pink than brown. So, love this. It almost looks similar to this one, the Kiko one, which is surprising because the Kiko one looks hot pink and this one looks so nude, like beside each other. I think they look so different. But on my hand, I think they're the most similar. So maybe that's why I like the Kiko one so much. But yeah, I would love to get some progress on this because I just haven't reached for it, obviously, all year. I haven't reached for it all year because I've been using all these other blushes. They just look like such different shades in the pan. But on my hand, I swear they're not that different. They're kind of far from each other, so it's hard to tell. But maybe I will swatch them next to each other next time in my final update. Maybe I will try using one on one cheek, one on the other. There's lots of possibilities for next year in terms of how I want to explore my blush collection and what I want to do, and if I want to try any other mini projects and, you know, try to declutter some of them, ones that I didn't love as much and whatnot. But anyways, I'm very excited to have this blush as my go-to in December as the year sort of wraps up. So once again, these are the 3 blushes that I will be using for the next few months. We've got MAC Angel, then Warm Soul, and then Party. So these are my favorite blushes of the year. At least that's what I'm thinking now. I will reevaluate at the end of the year. I will, of course, do one more update at the end of December, letting you know how I felt about these final 2 blushes, and then looking sort of at the year as a whole and evaluating how this project went, what I think were like the pros and cons, what I learned, talk about all of the blushes that I ended up decluttering in the end, because there will be at least 4. I have already decluttered 4 blushes, which is incredible. They were, of course, at the beginning of the year because those are the blushes that I liked the least, as I mentioned, how I structured this project. But yeah, this has been so productive. As I mentioned in the last update, I'm so glad that I found a blush that I fell in love with, but I'm really surprised to discover how I felt about the Wet n Wild and Milani blushes. I was not expecting to look forward to not having to use those anymore. Hopefully that is not the case with any of these. Hopefully I fully enjoy each of these months and it's not like, ugh, when can I get to the next one? I'm so tired of this. I will definitely try playing around with each of these by themselves and also in combination with other blushes because I always enjoy doing that. I did have some specific things I was going to talk about in this video, but they mostly pertain to these blushes and also because they're more about next year, thinking through my next year goals. I think I'll just save them for next video also because next video I'm mostly only going to be talking about 2 blushes, whereas this month I was talking about 4 blushes. So I'm gonna have some stuff to talk about next time. I also am going to figure out what my plans are pertaining to blush for 2025 for my next video. So if you have thoughts, do let me know because I haven't quite figured out, I have some other projects that I'm planning on instituting, but seeing as I will not be repeating my blush focus roulette, I need to figure out what my plans are. I really liked having regulated set of rules for what I was doing with blush this year. It just made it so much easier. I didn't have to make a decision. You know what I mean? Sometimes with eyeshadow palettes, I'm like, ooh, What do I do? Should I switch it out this week? Should I switch it out this month? How long have I had this eyeshadow palette in my like daily makeup bag? I don't even know because I haven't been tracking it. Like maybe I'll do something like this for eyeshadows for next year so that I'm using like a different palette every month. I don't know. I'm thinking through how I can plan to do this sort of structure for other aspects of my makeup collection because it has worked so well for blushes. But that is going to be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have been following along with this at all or doing something similar, maybe with a different aspect of your collection. Maybe I should do this with mascaras because I have a scary number of mascaras still. I don't know. I'm thinking through all this. I will have it figured out for my next update. Don't worry. But that is it for today. Let's talk about a book that I have been reading lately. So I recently read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's a weird cover, but it is a weird book. I had seen the movie many years ago, and I honestly don't remember it at all because I recognized absolutely nothing while reading the book, and I thought maybe they just adapted it differently. Like they took sort of the foundation of the idea and then they created a whole new story, a whole new world. But I was reading the synopsis of the movie and no, it was like exactly as the book was. Anyways, it doesn't matter. This was not really for me. It was so weird. If you haven't heard of it, it's like a sci-fi book where like it's very, very far into the future and there's all these different like planets and galaxies and species and whatever, and people for the most part like get along well, but it just, everything about it is like weird. It's like a bunch of different scenarios that he just like, the author had ideas about and he just wanted to play out, but like none of them are related to each other. Like we meet a bunch of different creatures on a bunch of different planets and like none of it meshes together. It's all just like, oh, I had a funny idea for a planet that would work here, and it has really nothing to do with the rest of the story. I don't know. It didn't work for me. The characters were weird and the like way that's the whole story flowed was weird. So, I mean, yeah, it's sci-fi. I do generally like sci-fi, but this was like too weird sci-fi for me. I don't think it was the sci-fi that was the issue. I think it was like the narrative and the way that it was told and the way that it was structured together. So I wouldn't recommend this book unless that sounds like fun for you, because some people love it. I know this is like a favorite. My partner, he was really excited that I was reading it because he loves it so much, but it just wasn't on for me. So no high recommendation here this week, unfortunately. But I'm using a different camera right now because the other one was not working. And this camera, I can only film for a few minutes at a time, so I'm always afraid that it's going to turn off. That's why I was talking very quickly for most of this video. You might have noticed, and also... But anyways, thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you next week. Bye!